All right. Good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, September 20th, 2022 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll jump into roll call. Commissioner Bowie?
Present.
Commissioner Engert?
Present.
Commissioner Faulkner?
Present.
Vice Chair Fizer?
Present.
Commissioner Manser?
Present.
Secretary Peterman?
Present.
Commissioner Kia?
Present.
Mayor Turnbow is absent, and Chairman Wiggins is here, so we have 8. Thank you. No personal appearances scheduled tonight, so we will move into item 5, the consent agenda. Approval of minutes from the September 6, 2022 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Any discussion on the topic? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of the item.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move we accept consent agenda.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Faulkner, a second by Commissioner Manser to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion of the item? All in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7. Oppose? And abstention. Abstain. Thank you, sir. So that'll be 701. Moving right along, we have no unfinished business, so that'll take us into item 7, new business. We have 2 items tonight, the first being case number 22025, UDC 35th Amendment. This item does require a public hearing, which I will open at this time, and would ask the applicant, in this case would be the staff, to please make any final presentation on the item, please.
Thank you and good evening. Tonight you have in front of you the 35th Amendment for the Unified Development Code. As this is a public hearing, it was advertised in the September 1st edition for the Raymore Journal. Would like to enter into the record of 4 items. That would be the Growth Management Plan, the Unified Development Code, the Notice of Publication, and the staff report. A couple things to mention is just the 35th Amendment to the UDC is a result of discussions that we had at our previous meeting, the September 6th meeting. Did want to go ahead and make mention for that. You all should have on your, in front of you, there was a small correction that needed to be made, as there was it mentioned 2026, it should say 2022. Just wanted to be upfront about that, as there was a clerical error on that. There were several topics that were discussed, and 4 of those topics are actually going to be brought for you tonight. The first is Section 1, which provides clarification on the requirements for screening related to the above-ground utilities, and specifically clarifies the distinction between multifamily residential districts and general residential districts. It was commented last time at our 6th meeting that the section number was incorrect, and so that has been corrected to reflect consistently with what our UDC shows. It was .030 and we changed it to .040. Section 2 provides the flexibility for, right now the code, when discussing swim pools, there's a gate that's required, and so this would actually just allow that to be able to swing either way due to either topography issues or what have you, pool locations. Section 3 provides the provisions for site trees. Right now there's nothing that differentiates the front yard, and so we were having some single-family homes that, as they're all required to have that site tree, they were putting it in the right-of-way, and so this just dictates that there is not to be any site trees in the right-of-way. Section 4 provides provisions related to the keeping of bees, and I know there were several comments at our September 6th meeting, one being the just who else have we reached out to, and so with that, when we were reaching out to these cities, they had actually already reached out to the extensions, which have generated the information that we were able to get, as well as talking to the property owners that actually have the bees. We were unable to do that. However, this provision would not affect them, as they had it prior to the code change, and so just wanted to clarify on that. Also, the final thing that was mentioned is just, is this the best section of the code to have this under, which is the keeping of animals? Bee is obviously not directly an animal, but staff felt that this was the best place for it without creating a whole nother section or something of that nature. Wanted to, trying to think here. That should be it. Staff will yield for questions at this point.
Thank you, sir. Any members of the commission have any final questions other than, and we mentioned it, Dylan, before you got in here, and I understand from Mr. Grass, just for record purposes, that the publication dates were accurate in the paper, but there were a couple of date issues on the opening cover page here. Public hearing is September 20th, and then October 10th, 2022 would be the council meeting. So just noting that for the record. But any members of the commission have any questions based on these revisions or based on our previous conversation?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Faulkner.
So I think I had kind of raised a concern about the title of that whole section D, keeping of animals, and I would just throw out, I think I'd be a little more comfortable with it if the title of section D was changed to say keeping of animals and bees, or I thought about keeping of animals and insects, but I think I like keeping of animals and bees better, so I just throw that out, see what anybody else thinks.
Yeah, I would clarify, Mr. Eppert and I did discuss that, and unfortunately I wasn't at the previous meeting where that was discussed, and so our direction was to proceed as it was presented to you all at the last meeting and leave it up for the direction to the commission. The keeping of animals and insects was an option that Mr. Eppert and I had kind of landed on, but we wanted to yield that direction to the commission.
That was actually a good pun. Landed on. Thank you.
I was going to kind of on that same line. I was going to ask Mr. Zur
Mr.
if,
Zur.
from a legal standpoint, if we left it as just keeping of animals, if that would create any issues, since bees are not in fact animals, and therefore we should change the name of it.
This does not create an issue for legal.
Okay.
If legal's good with it, I'm good with it. Do you have any additional questions, sir? Anybody other commissioners have any more questions or items to discuss on this topic? Okay. I did at 7:01. So at this point, I would ask if there's any members of the public that are waiting in the wings that would like to come forward to discuss or provide input on this item to please do so. Seeing none, I will not go through the rest of the procedural pieces and would therefore close the public hearing at 7:07.
And then, Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a motion, if that's
Please,
okay.
Mr. Akia.
I'd like to go ahead and propose, or, excuse me, Christmas. I'd like to go ahead and create a motion to accept the staff proposed finding of facts and forward case number 22025, the 35th Amendment to the UDC, to the City Council with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Akia, second by Commissioner Bowie to accept the staff proposed findings of fact and forward case 22025, 35th Amendment to the UDC to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion, final discussion of the topic? Seeing none, all in favor? Seeing all hands raised, it will pass 8-0. Thank you very much. Moving right along, we will jump to item B, the update on the 2022 Rules of Procedure, at which point I would turn that over to staff, please.
Okay, thank you very much. So just to give a brief history on this, we had made mention of a time change for Planning Commission at our August 2nd meeting, and there was made mention of just there's procedurally some things that need to be changed, and so that is actually reflected in Article 6 under Meetings and Public Hearings, Section 2. And ultimately, the only change that we're proposing tonight, just going from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m., and this would actually not go into effect until the October 18th meeting, as we've already published a public hearing for October 4th for a rezoning, and so that meeting would still be at 7 o'clock, but staff will yield for any questions that you might have.
I obviously was not here at the meeting when you guys initially discussed that, so I don't have all the information, but does anybody have any questions?
Yeah,
Sir, Mr. Akia.
I'm just curious. I know we had caveated this to go in line with the City Council. The assumption would be that City Council approved this. I'm just curious how that went.
City Council City Council did pass a change to the hours. However, it's not going to be effective until April of next year. Other commissions, though, for the city have in fact approved it at 6 p.m. You're talking Arts Commission and otherwise.
The Arts Commission, Park Board, I believe there may be one other one have transitioned to the 6 o'clock time frame.
And effective immediately.
Yes, correct.
Just out of curiosity from the other members of the commission, since I wasn't here, was there concerns or opposition? Or, I mean, personally, it makes it a little more difficult for me, but I can make arrangements to.
There was some discussion around timing for folks. I had brought up, if there's an accident on 49 and you're coming back from downtown, that could prove difficult for someone to make that time. They did, or for people coming to present. They mentioned that most presenters get here well before the start time anyway, and this would also probably make it easier on them to beat rush hour traffic to get here a little earlier. So there was some discussion around it that I recall.
Any other comments or statements on the meeting that I missed?
Yes, I had a wondering of why, it was placed at 7 o'clock in the first place. And I didn't really get an answer in that Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. However, I did get an answer whenever I looked at the article in the North Cass Herald that talked about the council meeting that occurred and the motion and how it was made in response to the Prop P not passing. It was sort of the council and the city staff against the citizens is kind of how I viewed it, and how it was portrayed in the statements from that article. So given that, I think I will be opposing the change.
I'm sorry, did you say that the Herald said that it was this?
The Herald reported on the city council meeting where Councilman Townsend stated that this was, in a way, a response to the Prop P not passing, the citizens not taking into mind city staff.
So he was saying that because they didn't pass Prop B, that this was a response to the citizens to let them know then we're not going to keep the staff here later?
Yeah.
Okay. Just
Well,
trying to understand what the...
Yeah. I mean, personally, my wife, she works till 6 and doesn't get home till 6:30. So, I mean, I can make arrangements through family to watch my kids. My biggest concern, obviously, is, I imagine most staff members work till 5, and then you guys have to kind of hang around for a couple hours. And I imagine you guys don't all just live down the street where you can just run home and hang out. So, but yes, please, Mr. Faulkner.
Yeah, since you asked my thoughts, and I kind of see both ways on this, so I would say it's obvious. I thank city staff at every meeting, and I don't do that lightly. So on the one side, I'm perfectly happy to do what we can to accommodate city staff. It does make sense from that standpoint. On the flip side, I'm concerned with what I would call our primary customers, which are applicants and residents. And I think, I would rank that as a higher priority to try to be accommodating to them. If they can come after work or get a bite to eat before, then to me, 7 works better. And frankly, it's our starting time has been 7 o'clock for at least 2 decades. And so I don't have a problem with that. Ultimately, what it kind of came down to, and this will be my comment for the case tonight, I felt like ultimately, since we and City Council primarily are the 2 boards that take public input, that have public hearings and all, I felt like, it wasn't really too difficult for me to ignore any precedents that were set by Park Board or Arts Commission or whatever, but the precedent from City Council, since I see, public hearings coming through us, then going to them, and I felt like consistency was probably the most important reason for matching up to City Council. So having said that, if they're not switching until next April, I would probably be a lot more comfortable with waiting for Planning and Zoning Commission to switch at the same time City Council does. That's-
Is there any reason, if we did make the change and we decided to push out the start, even if it was January 1st, is there any issues with that? Ultimately, I guess, would it be up to us to decide and let you all know this is when we would be moving it to?
So a couple things just to clarify some of the questions. The reasoning for the City Council's delayed start for this decision had to do with the, being elected to that position. An individual may have not have chosen to assume that position given the change in between a existing council term.
Sure.
Some of those individuals accepted that position and were elected under the assumption that the meeting started at 7. Therefore, it made a lot of sense from the council standpoint. The next election, those individuals that would run would know that those meetings begin at 6 o'clock. So if the commission decides to mirror that, I agree that for consistency's sake, that does make a lot of sense. I certainly don't disagree with you there. Relative to staff, the comment that was made at the council meeting, whether it's 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, staff will be here. Myself, Mr. Eppert, Ms. Jordan, Mr. Zur. The decision really is an impetus. Staff does, there is a lot of downtime that's made, and Mr. Eppert and I do get caught up on a lot of things within those 2 hours without having to answer phone calls. So it is kind of a nice getaway from the day-to-day stuff here inside City Hall. But the impetus behind that was that it is 2 hours that are kind of just spent hanging out. It's difficult for some of us to go home if we have to within that 2 hour time frame. But again, that being said, whether it's 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or a delayed change, staff will be here regardless. Relative to the applicants, that's the only one I can speak for certain. Given that those applications are filed well in advance, most applicants have plenty of time to plan for those meetings, get them on their schedule. But I certainly see the perspective of the residents that may be commuting in from a job that may find it a little more difficult to make the time to attend meetings if they wish. So certainly understand your comments and some of those concerns. Relative to the decision, again, whether the commission wishes to act on it tonight or postpone it, I know staff's open to either one of those decisions. This was just bringing it back for a formal consideration following the discussion at the previous Planning and Zoning meeting.
And regardless of if we change the time, we still would welcome applicants, or citizens, if they were unable to make our meeting, whether we change the time or not, that we still welcome in writing folks to email you, so they would have, it's not like we're cutting off all avenues if we were to change. So it was my first kind of question / more statement. Second is, ultimately, I just want to ask the members of the commission, is there anybody where this puts an undue burden on them? I will have to figure something out, but it's not something that's going to prevent me from being at these meetings. And ultimately, that's because we did, to a certain extent, when we were, asked to come serve on this commission, it was with the understanding that it would be at 7 o'clock, and that could potentially mess up some people's time. So obviously, it's our commission and for us to decide. So if anybody has a true issue with it, please feel free to speak freely at this time. Okay. Any final questions or discussion? Or I guess we would need a motion. And if anybody has a particular starting date, if they were wanting to preference anything versus being as soon as possible, feel free to do so in your motion, if anybody would like to.
I'll make a motion.
Yes, sir. Mr. Bowie.
I make a motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission changes its start date, as mentioned earlier, as soon as October 18th. I'll make that motion.
Change the start time to 6
Change start
p.m.
time, yeah. Change start time as soon as October 18th. that meeting.
That would be to 6 o'clock?
Yes.
6 p.m.? Yes, sir.
Sorry, I didn't quite word that properly, but
Do I have a second for the motion?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Bowie, second by Secretary Peterman, to update the 2022 rules and procedures to reflect a 6 p.m. meeting time beginning on October 16, 2022 for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Any discussion, final discussion of the topic, please?
I believe Commissioner Bowie may have commented on October 2nd.
October 18th.
18.
Or is it 18th? I'm sorry, I may have said 16th.
Yep, just want to make sure it's the right date there. Okay.
Sorry, I wrote 16, but yes, October 18th. Any final discussion?
Quickly,
Yes, sir, please, Mr. Manser.
just, I didn't entirely, I didn't articulate my point very well earlier. I think that the decision was made to, yes, prioritize city staff over citizens and, potential applicants. And that was my point that I was trying to get across. Just thought I'd make that clear.
Appreciate the clarification. Any final discussion or comments, please? If not, all in favor of moving the meeting to 6? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? And any abstentions? All right, so that will pass 7-1-0. And as always, Mr. Manser, we do offer commissioners an opportunity if they have any final comments regarding a nay vote.
I will accept and move forward. I have no problem doing that, and I think I got my point across on why I oppose.
Very good, sir. Thank you very much. All right, so that will conclude our new business for this evening. That would then take us to Mr. Zer with our city council reports.
Thank you, Chairman. Since your September 6th meeting, there has been one city council meeting where regular business was conducted. It was the September 12th, 2022 meeting. During the course of that meeting, the city council had the opportunity to review and vote for a first reading under new business for the Timber Trail's third final plat. This had been previously approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on September 6th by a vote of 7-1. This is the Brad Kempf, representing Clayton Properties LLC, requesting a final plat approval for the third phase of the Timber Trail subdivision, and located generally at Dean Avenue and Shagbark Drive, creating 38 new single-family lots. It also included the extension of the Dean Avenue asphalt trail. That is the only thing that was of consideration for the City Council during its September 12th, 2022 meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding that.
Any questions for Mr. Zer? Okay. Staff report, or anything to add to his report, please?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I have a couple items, and then I'll toss over to David Gress for additional information. But wanted to make note, tomorrow night is a good neighbor meeting for the rezoning there at Willow Wind. It'll actually be here at City Hall, but at 6 o'clock. And so anybody from the public is definitely welcome to attend that. It would be a rezoning from professional office to general commercial district. And so that will be actually in front of you October the 4th. The second item that I wanted to mention is that once the 35th amendment for the UDC has been second read for the council, we'll actually be switching from Unicode to E360. And so that will actually help every time we do a UDC amendment, they actually will do that automatically instead of having to do a lot of manual input, and it's a little bit more less staff time than what we actually have to put forward for right now. And then the third one is just this past week, Mr. Gress and I went out to Whataburger to do the kind of final site plan review for the landscaping and parking and things of that nature. And so that has been approved and with a tentative open date of October the 3rd. So,
Real quick, before you pass to Mr. Gress, the first item, at Willow Wind, is it just that first 2 or 3 doors on the left of the building?
so it'll be that entire building,
That entire,
on the
the
west
whole
side.
But just that building though, it's not the entire where Big Daddy's.
Correct.
And
There's
just
like a little patio area that separates the two buildings, so it'll be just that far west side directly north of the bank.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Was there, did you say?
Mr. Gress.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eppert. I wanted to touch on the, Mr. Eppert mentioned the E-Code 360. Staff's very excited about that, not only because it simplifies the process for us. The commission will also receive new updated code books. I'm sure most of you have probably not an old version of the UDC, but one that you've had for quite some time. That software actually, it allows the city clerk to offer a lot of things that are not functional on the system we have right now in terms of public records. Makes it a lot easier for residents to search bill information, records within the city than what is currently offered right now. So we're excited to start that migration, but the last thing to take care of was getting this code amendment passed so that everything is fresh and new. So stay tuned over the next, would hope a couple of months before those code books are issued, but I'll be in touch with each one of you at the appropriate meeting to get those hand delivered to you all at that time. I wanted to provide some information because I was absent at the last meeting right at the beginning of the month. I didn't have a chance to put together the monthly report for August, but I wanted to go through a couple of items that I shared with the council at their last meeting, particularly related to just activity within the department. August was a very busy month for inspections. You'll see there between our two building inspectors, 839 inspections during that month. Previously, 2 months ago, 740 was the high number, which I thought was high until this past month. And so those two individuals have been very busy over the last month or so. Additionally, you all have probably noticed that Watermark has broken ground on their site. They've done a lot of grading. I expect a lot of rock removal from that site via jackhammering over the next couple of weeks, but they've scraped that ground pretty clean, and they're in the process of getting that ground prepared for utility infrastructure. Behind Sam's Club. Yes, right off of Dean Avenue. If there's a Costco in Raymore, I want to know about that. In addition to that, there's been substantial progress made at Raymore Commerce Center. Building 2, well, Building 3 is nearing substantial completion. They were doing asphalt paving last week and some striping. Mr. Keller, our ED director, is hard at work trying to work with Van Trust to find a tenant or tenants for that building. And then building number 2, which is 500,000 square feet, they are doing some tying together the concrete panels and adding the roof structure earlier this afternoon. So a lot of progress moving down south. Right across the street, Johnny's Tavern, they've made a lot of vertical progress during the month of August. If you follow them on Facebook, they've been pretty active. I know they shared some progress photos of kind of what the patio looks like, which I know is what staff is most excited about here moving forward. Overall, and then as Mr. Eppert mentioned, on October 4th, there will be a proposed rezoning at that meeting. Right now, that's the only item scheduled for that meeting. Will be a public hearing, and again, there is a good neighbor meeting here tomorrow night. So that will conclude staff report. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Paul.
On the Waterloo or Waterwork one,
Watermark.
Watermark, thank you. Do we know where we landed on the water feature?
Yes, the city did request that they provide an engineering study on the detention pond that is on that property. Because of the substantial amount of rock that exists beneath that, it's not physically able to hold water without removing all of that rock and reconstructing the pond. Instead, what they've done is they've submitted a very nice landscape plan, so they will dress that pond up quite a bit with some grass turf, some additional trees. And then in addition, what they're constructing on the south side of that property is a trailhead, which will then connect to the trail system that leads further south through that subdivision. And so that was in lieu of the kind of water feature that they had hoped to build on that site, but given the engineering, it just was not feasible for the project.
Mr. Faulkner, you had your finger up.
Okay.
Okay.
Quick question about something called the Groves. Did you guys want to discuss that or not, or is it way too early for that?
It is fairly early. You all are familiar with the property. It's actually the property there at 58 and Fox Ridge. It's right between Mott Drive and Fox Ridge. Mm-hmm. There is a developer that's pursuing that. You all have seen the signs up on the property there that they're pursuing it. Retail development coming soon. Staff, it's too early to share any of the details, but staff is working with them on would likely require a rezoning based on the mix of uses they're proposing, in addition to a new preliminary plat. The commission, I believe in 2019, approved the Dean Commercial Preliminary Plat, which is where the Hy-Vee project came from. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I will report to the commission that Hy-Vee has abandoned that project in addition to the other 4 locations that they had proposed. So there is a developer that's looking to purchase the entirety of that undeveloped site, and staff is working with them right now.
So there is a large meeting coming up on the 28th that they're having with, I know they sent out a notice to all Eagle Glen residents to possibly attend via Zoom. So I don't know if the commission was aware of that or not, but it's called the Groves, and there's a developer, and they're looking at that area around Culver's. that's totally empty. They sent out, preliminary drawings and things, mixed-use development type thing, apartment, townhome, maybe some pads out front for retail space, 6 or 7 of those. But that meeting is coming up on the 28th. If you like, I can share those details in an email
Please.
to everybody.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that.
Okay.
Staff had had an internal meeting with that developer, and they did request information for Eagle Glen, Foxhaven, as well as the lofts adjacent to them for some information to start sharing it. And so I reached out to you personally to try and get that HOA information, which I appreciate. So I'm glad they reached out to you and set that up. At this time, it's too early for staff to share any of that information, but I will definitely yield to the developer to share what information they wish.
Is it okay that I share the email with
I was
the
going to
other
say, I
folks?
think Mr. Zur might have, especially because if we have a quantity issue of individuals.
Yeah, my only concern is absolutely do what you can in order to be able to educate yourselves on this, but obviously, as far as commission members, you do need to be careful about how many people are involved at any given time for quorum purposes. Beyond that, discussing it and taking a particular position at any point prior to it coming before you all, you need to be cautious about. Please do not.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just for sake, obviously, Mr. Bowie's in the area, but if 1 or 2 other people happen to be in attendance, that would be fine. We run into an issue at 5, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir.
Your concern is if he emails it to us and then we start emailing, replying all to it, that we've, in a sense, created a...
You will have created a public document at that particular point, and if you are telegraphing or identifying positions, concerns, et cetera, before it comes before you, it does pose problems for me.
In addition, if 5 of us happen to be on that call, that would also be an issue.
Quorum. So what I'll do is, if you're interested, send me an email, and I will shoot you an individual, and I will make sure I don't send it out to more than 4 or 5.
And I don't want to squelch educational opportunities for this commission. Absolutely feel free to use it as educational, but refrain from the comment and refrain from making decisions.
So again, though, if you guys want to know, shoot me an email. I'll send it to you.
If I could close by one, the reason for the developer requesting that was to get in touch with the neighbors that were immediately adjacent to it. So, obviously throughout the commission, the closer you live, the more important it might be for you to educate yourself on that project at this time.
Thank you. Any other questions for city staff? Did you have something earlier, Mr. Faulkner? Okay. All right. Real quick, just because I was poking around on the what's happening in our neighborhood piece the other day, and I assume you guys update it regularly, but if a project happens to go on hold and if it's gone back on, does that normally get updated? Like, I just was curious, Parkside was listed as on hold, but I know a couple months ago they were doing massive tree removal and grading work, so I just was curious if that was just needs to be updated or if that's back on.
So 2 things I can answer with that. With that specific mapping application, not to get technical, but ArcGIS, which is the platform that hosts it, has moved that particular application into what they call extended support, which means there are kind of bugs they don't really necessarily support or fix anymore. So I've been working with our GIS person, coordinator, to try and identify maybe a different app that's a little more new. I still do update it regularly when applications go through the process, but we've ran into some issues with links not working and so forth. So I try and stay up, me and Dylan try and stay on top of that as much as we can.
Okay.
Specific to Parkside, right now, I would clarify the project is on hold in terms of the subdivision development. The developer right now is working on the extension of 163rd and Sunset, which they're required to do regardless of, as part of the development, but separate from the creation of any lots at this time. So I know engineering is working on finalizing and reviewing some engineering plans relative to the actual phase of development that was being proposed by that developer.
Thank you. Any final questions? I know I've asked that like 3 times, but that'll take us to public comment. I don't see anybody, but if there's any members of the public that would like to come forward to speak at this time, please do so. Seeing none, we will move into commission member comments. I will start on my left tonight with Commissioner Urquilla.
Oh, this is new. I have to take a second here.
Usually, because when the mayor's on the end, I usually leave him towards the end. But
As usual, I want to thank the city staff for everything you guys do. Unfortunately, I know we're taking an hour away of hanging out that you would have been able to go to Johnny's or Whataburger while you were waiting for the meeting to start. So you'll have to make your dinner runs a little quicker now. No, appreciate all you do. It's exciting to kind of see the developments taking place, things kind of coming to fruition, buildings going up very quickly on South Dean, and things like that around the community. So exciting times.
Keep moving my way. Commissioner Ingert?
I'd also like to say thank you to the staff. You consistently produce good documents that make it easy to read and understand, and I sincerely appreciate your efforts in that form.
Vice Chair Fizer.
I'd also like to thank staff, and I'd like to thank Commissioner Bowie for bringing up the Grove, because I was kind of wondering about that too. I saw some stuff on our Facebook page, and I try not to let people know that I'm on the commission, just so that I don't get a lot of questions or things that's like, I'm not going to give you any information. So I try to stay away from their opinions too. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I was wondering about that as well. So thanks.
Commissioner Faulkner?
And thank you to staff, and in my opinion, it was a particularly informative meeting this evening, since I can't rely on the Journal to fill me in on things. And it was a lot of good newsworthy stuff, and I appreciate that.
Secretary Peterman?
Thanks, staff. You always do a good job.
Commissioner Manser?
I hate that I had to oppose the way I did. I hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. I do value your time. I value everything you do. I thank you guys a lot, so keep up the good work.
Commissioner Bowie?
Nothing in particular. Thank you, staff. Appreciate it. And nice beard. Looks good. Feels like when you first came in, you were like bright-eyed, bushy-tail, young, didn't. Now you're like, you're falling into your role well, so that's good to see.
I'm a little more seasoned now, given the last 6 years of my life here, so
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Great, good. All right, with that, that's it. Thanks.
I did like Commissioner Faulkner's comment about being able to grab a bite to eat, and I was almost willing to propose that we move our meetings to 6 o'clock at Johnny's Tavern, so that way our constituents would be able to sit and eat while we discuss certain matters. I have a feeling there probably would be some sort of, AV problems and recording and legal issues and sunshine and this, that, and the other. And so, yeah, with that, thank you, as always, city staff, for everything you do. I believe there's only one more farmers market coming up after tonight that's just ending. This weekend in our neighboring town of Lee Summit is Oktoberfest, starting on Friday night. It's one of my favorite fall festivals, so if you've never been to that, I highly suggest you maybe consider going. They've got lots of craft booths and carnival and stuff for kids, lots of food and drink and fun. So that'll be lasting this weekend. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this evening.
Real quick, isn't our festival this weekend?
It is. You're right. The Raymore Festival is this
Yeah.
weekend as well. Parade starts on Saturday morning. How did I overlook that?
Well, it was you pitching Lee Summit, so I was like,
I
wait
know.
a minute.
I
know ours is
appreciate
coming up,
the,
and I'm like, wait a minute, it's like this weekend.
I appreciate the correct. So go to the Raymore one. The parade is Saturday morning, and then if you're in the Lee Summit area after that, feel free to partake. And there's probably one going on somewhere in neighboring towns as well. Just support your communities. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Kia, second by Commissioner Manser to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you. 8-0.